Hi, it's Mark Donegan, host of the Marketing Execution Podcast. Most companies jump straight from problem to solution, but Bruce Scheer says that's backward. He says to flip the order, first spotlight the problem, then paint the desired outcome, and finally introduce your solution. I've actually seen this same pattern across dozens of B2B launches. Join me as we unpack this topic.
Up, it's marketing time. Bright ideas sparking, growing your mind. From strategies to big exec dreams, catch the buzz and join the execution. Marketing Convo.
Welcome to the Marketing Execution Podcast. This is the show for tech founders and leaders building B2B products and technologies. We show you how to go further, faster to get the business results you need.
From strategies to big exec dreams, catch the buzz and join the execution. Marketing Convo.
Hey, Mark, you know how we're always telling founders to nail their messaging, get their story straight, all that good stuff?
Yeah, of course. It's foundational, right?
Right. But here's what's bugging me. I was going through this interview with Bruce Scheer, the guy who wrote Inspire Your Buyers, and he dropped a stat that actually made me stop and rewind. He says he can count on one hand, maybe two, the number of companies that actually get their go-to-market narrative right.
That's brutal. But honestly, I believe it. I've seen it over and over again. Companies think they have a story, but what they really have is, well, it's what Scheer calls random acts of conversation.
Random acts of conversation. I love that phrase.
It's so good because it captures exactly what happens. Marketing's putting out one message, sales is saying something completely different, and the product team? They're off in their own world talking about features nobody asked about.
And then the CEO wonders why revenue's flat.
Exactly. And you know what? Scheer discusses 3 major mistakes companies make when trying to fix this problem. And honestly, on the Marketing Execution Podcast, we should dig into each one because I guarantee founders listening are making at least one of these right now.
Okay, let's hear them. What's the first one?
The first one is just doing nothing. And I know that sounds obvious, but it's more insidious than you think. Leaders convince themselves that, well, I hired smart people. They'll figure it out. My marketing team should handle this. If my sellers can't connect the dots, they shouldn't be working here anyway.
Oh man, I've heard that exact justification before.
Right? It's this weird abdication of responsibility disguised as empowerment. But the narrative, the story you tell the market, that's not something you can just delegate and hope for the best. It requires deep strategic work at the leadership level.
So, what's the second mistake?
Farming it off to someone too junior. So instead of doing nothing, companies say, okay, let's have our product marketing director own this, or some mid-level marketing person. And look, those people are talented, but
they can't see the forest for the trees.
Yes, they're too close to it. And worse, they don't have the political capital to push back on bad ideas from above. There's this company where someone in marketing came up with this positioning that they were, quote, more human than competitors. And I'm like, what does that even mean to a buyer? Nothing. It means nothing.
More human. That's rough.
And the third mistake is just outsourcing the whole thing to a brand agency. Now look, agencies do great work on the visual stuff, the taglines, the sexy creative, but Scheer has this great analogy. He says that's like putting frosting on a cake without making sure the cake itself is any good.
So you end up with beautiful messaging that doesn't actually resonate.
Bingo. And all 3 of these mistakes have the same cost. Time. You're losing precious time where you could be getting market traction.
Okay, so let's say a founder is listening and they're like, all right, I get it. I need to own this. What's the actual framework? What should they be building toward?
So this is where Scheer's model gets really practical. He breaks it down into a sequence, and the order matters.
You start with your ideal client profile and target buyers. Then you spotlight their big problem. Then, and this is where most people mess up, you help them envision their desired outcome before you talk about your solution.
Wait, before the solution?
Before. Most salespeople and marketers want to jump straight from problem to solution. Problem, solution, done. But that's backwards. You need to let the buyer sit in the pain for a moment, then paint this picture of what life looks like when that problem goes away. Let them feel that future state. And only then do you introduce how you get them there.
That's actually kind of counterintuitive. We're always told to lead with value, show the solution fast.
I know, but think about it from the buyer's psychology. If you haven't anchored on the problem and the desired outcome, they have no framework to evaluate your solution. You're just another vendor pitching features.
And he has this concept of the big solution too, right? Not just listing everything you do.
Oh, this is so important. He has this rule. Describe your solution in 1, 2, 3, or no more than 4 words. And there's this great story he tells about a VR company selling to hospitals. The guy originally described it as Netflix for doctors.
Netflix for doctors? That's confusing.
Totally confusing. So Scheer works with him and they land on 3 words: experience without risk. Because what they're really selling to chief medical officers is a way to let junior surgeons practice without hurting patients.
Experience without risk. That's clean. That's memorable.
And it speaks to what the buyer cares about. Not the technology, not the features, the outcome. Better healthcare outcomes through experience without risk.
And there's another piece here that I think founders miss. He talks about finding the bully with the juice.
I love that phrase. It's from this professor, Steve Martin, not the comedian. And it just means stop trying to convince everyone in the building. Find the person with the budget and the decision rights. That's your hero. That's who your narrative is for.
Not the whole buying committee?
Look, consensus matters eventually, but your story, your narrative, it needs to be crafted for the decision maker. Everyone else is an influencer. The bully with the juice is who writes the check.
Mark, that's fascinating. Let's pivot for a second and talk about what this means for a founder who's pre-revenue and trying to figure out who their bully with the juice even is.
You know, Tim, that's the question that keeps founders up at night. And honestly, it's where most of them get stuck. They're so deep in building the product that they haven't stopped to really think about who actually signs the check.
Yeah, and I think there's this temptation to just say, well, everyone could use our product, which is basically saying nobody is your customer.
That's it. And here's why this matters so much for early stage founders. When you don't know who your bully with the juice is, you end up crafting a narrative that speaks to no one. You're just throwing spaghetti at the wall, hoping something sticks.
And burning cash the whole time.
Exactly. Every month you spend talking to the wrong people is a month you're not getting traction.
So how does a pre-revenue founder even begin to identify who that person is?
Okay, so this is where it gets practical. You have to do the work before you have customers. You talk to people in your target market, not to sell them anything, just to understand their world. And you're listening for who has the budget and the authority to make a decision like the one you're asking for.
So you're doing customer discovery, but with a specific lens.
Yes, you're not just validating the problem, you're mapping the decision-making structure. And the person who feels the pain the most is often not the person who can buy the solution.
Oh, that's huge. Say more about that.
Think about it. The junior marketing manager might be drowning in manual reporting tasks. They feel that pain every single day. But can they go buy a $50,000 analytics platform? No way. That decision sits with the VP of marketing or maybe even the CMO. So your narrative has to speak to what that person cares about.
Which is probably not the day-to-day frustration of manual reporting.
Right. The CMO cares about pipeline velocity, about attribution, about proving marketing's impact to the board. So your big problem isn't manual reporting. Your big problem is marketing teams can't prove their value to the business. See how different that is?
That's a completely different conversation. Same product, totally different story.
And that is why this matters so much. The narrative you build determines which doors open for you. Get it wrong, and you're having conversations with people who can't buy. Get it right, and suddenly you're in rooms with decision makers who are nodding along because you're speaking their language.
I think there's something really liberating about this for founders, too. Once you know exactly who you're talking to, you can stop trying to be everything to everyone.
Oh, absolutely. It's actually easier to build a compelling narrative when you have constraints. When you know your hero is a VP of operations at a mid-market manufacturing company, you can get really specific about their world, their fears, their goals, the metrics they're measured on.
And that specificity is what makes the story resonate.
100%. Generic stories don't move people. Specific stories do. When a buyer hears you describe their exact situation, they lean in. They think, this person gets me.
Okay, so we've talked about finding the right buyer, crafting the narrative around their problem and desired outcome. I want to shift gears and get really tactical. How does a founder actually take this framework and put it into practice day to day?
Tim, ideas are great, but execution is everything. Let's get into how people can actually use this stuff.
Yes. Okay, this is what I've been waiting for. Give me the playbook.
All right, so step one, and this is non-negotiable. You gotta write down your big problem in one sentence. And here's the test. Can your buyer read it and immediately nod their head? If they have to think about it, you've lost them.
So, what does that actually look like in practice?
Okay, think about Gong, the revenue intelligence platform. Their big problem isn't about call recording or transcription. It's that sales leaders can't see what's actually happening in their deals. That's it. One sentence. Every sales VP hears that and goes, yep, that's my life.
And that's what opens the door.
Exactly. Now, step two. Once you've got that problem nailed, you write down the outcome. Not what your product does, what life looks like after they buy.
The beach, like we talked about before.
The beach, yes. And again, one sentence. What's the promise? For Gong, it's something like, sales leaders finally have visibility into every conversation so they can coach their teams and close more deals.
So you're painting a picture of the future state.
Right, and you can test this today. Go find 5 people who fit your buyer profile. Read them your problem statement. Then read them your outcome statement. Watch their faces.
What are you looking for?
You're looking for the lean in, the head nod, the moment where they go, tell me more. If you get blank stares, you go back to the drawing board.
That's such a low-cost way to validate your narrative.
0 cost. You can do it over coffee. You can do it on LinkedIn.
Okay, so we've got problem, we've got outcome. What about the solution piece?
So this is where founders mess up. They want to jump straight into features. Don't do that. Your solution statement should be 4 words or less. Think about it. Slack's big solution, real-time team communication. Stripe, payments for the internet. You don't need a paragraph. You need a concept that sticks.
And then the features come later.
Way later. Only after your buyer is bought in on the problem and outcome. Then they'll ask about features. And that's when you know you've got them.
So, tactically, how does a founder use this day to day?
Every piece of content you create, every sales call you make, every email you send, it should follow this flow. Problem first, outcome second, solution third. It becomes your operating system.
Like a checklist before you hit send.
Exactly. I tell founders to literally put a sticky note on their monitor. Does this lead with the problem? If the answer is no, rewrite it.
Old school, but effective.
Hey, whatever works. And here's one more thing. Practice whiteboarding your narrative. Grab a marker, draw it out. Problem on the left, outcome on the right, solution as the bridge between them.
Visual storytelling.
It works in sales calls. It works in board meetings. It works in investor pitches. When you can draw your story, you own it.
Okay, Mark, we have covered a lot of ground today. Can you bring it all together for our listeners and give us the key takeaways from everything we discussed?
All right, let me bring this home. We started with a hard truth. Almost no companies get their go-to-market narrative right. They either do nothing, hand it off to someone too junior, or outsource it to agencies who make it pretty but not powerful. The cost of all three mistakes is the same. You lose time.
And time is everything for a startup.
Everything. So here's what we covered. First, you gotta find your bully with the juice, the person who actually writes the check, not the one who feels the pain most. Second, you build your narrative in order. Problem first, desired outcome second, solution last. And that solution, 4 words or less. Third, you test it constantly. Read it to real buyers. Watch for the lean in. If you get blank stares, you rewrite it. Finally, you make this your operating system.
Mark, after all of that, what's the one thing you really hope people don't forget?
Your buyer doesn't care about your product. They care about their problem and whether you understand it better than anyone else. Lead with that, and everything else gets easier.
The Marketing Execution Podcast is produced by Growth Stage Marketing. We are on a mission to see your company reach wild success using marketing pods.
Too big, accept dreams. Catch the buzz and join the execution. Marketing Convo.
Thank you for listening and being a part of the marketing execution movement and community. To learn how growth stage marketing clients reach more buyers and drive business impact, go to growthstage.marketing. That's growthstage.marketing.